Please welcome our first speaker, Kerry Smith, Senior Product Manager at Lean Technologies.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here today. So today I'm here to talk to you about what I've called the Balancing Act, managing multiple customer needs in B2B products. So a little about me, my name is Kerry, I'm a Senior Product Manager. I'm from the UK, I moved to Dubai earlier this year. I've been in product now for about 6 years. I've worked on products from 0 to 1 and scaled them, mostly within the payments and Fintech space from my time at Dojo, but also dabbled in markets and tech, Vidsy, and then most recently joined Lean to lead their data and insights product here in the region. So what makes B2B different from B2C product management? Typically in B2B, you're going to have a much smaller targeted customer base, and these are going to be higher value customers. Whereas in B2C, you're going to find that you have a really broad customer base, of the thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions potentially. And so one of the key differences that you'll find when you're working in products is that in B2C, you can run a lot more test and learn cycles and experimentation because you've got huge numbers of customers coming through the funnel that losing a couple probably isn't going to hurt your bottom lines. In B2B though, because you have a much smaller customer base, until you scale to a certain point, it's going to be very difficult to experiment. You won't have this statistical analysis available across the number of customers, and also every customer really counts. So losing them can be very critical to your revenues. In B2B, you'll also find that you have longer sales cycles, and it's much more focused on building relationships and partnerships with the companies that you're working with. Whereas in B2C, it's a lot more transactional. The customer is very far removed from you in your day-to-day job. In B2B, you're going to be involved in working a lot more closely with the commercial team and customer success. Whereas in B2C, you're going to probably focus a bit more on the marketing side and building those value propositions that help to refer and network customers. And this leads into the next point. In B2B, while you're working on these longer-term relationships with customers, there's a lot more balance that's required in building your product and thinking about what you're actually going to build. And that's because these customers are businesses. They already have their own ecosystem, they're an organization, they have processes, and they have a product that they're working with as well. And you have to somehow fit your product into their needs, whilst also making it available and working across a multitude of your target market as well. So it's like different to how you're thinking about B2C, where it's a lot more that consumption, standardized nature across your product. As I mentioned before, with those longer sales cycles in B2B, you're going to find that you're a lot more involved in those conversations as a product manager. You might attend networking events, industry events, and have a lot more face time with your customers. Whereas in B2C, whilst you might have face time with doing research, you're not really in the room in the conversations around purchasing of a product in B2C. So actually, you're going to work very closely with your product marketing manager or your marketing teams to make sure you have a really clear, strong narrative on your product that sells the value to a consumer that you're fabricating from. And lastly, which we'll talk a little bit more about today, is the multiple stakeholders that are involved in B2B and decision making. Because there's a number of people that might be utilizing your products within a business. Ultimately, their voices come to the table, and there's a number of different needs and concerns that you have to consider. In B2C, though, it's a lot more straightforward. It's just one person. You're very far removed from them, and you're not going to be in those conversations. So ultimately, in B2C, you're really going to heavily focus on that strong narrative and a frictionless journey that persuades the user to buy. B2B, though, you're going to be in those rooms helping to persuade alongside the commercial team and customer success, and it's really going to be a team effort to get a customer over the line. So why a balancing act? As I mentioned now, with the multiple stakeholders in B2B, it's often a committee that you're trying to win over, and that can mean that you need to build a product that is compelling enough to multiple different people that they're willing to purchase, that they're going to actually utilize it, and that they can work with the product. So why does that become a challenge? If you over-index on one persona, you'll likely find that actually you don't have a product that's fit for the market, and you can derail the product quite heavily. So some examples here, if you look at focusing on the buyer only, they might purchase, but you could end up with a product that's overly complicated and doesn't work at all for the end user. So you're going to end up with low adoption or customers using your product in very quirky ways to make it work for the needs that they have. If you then focus too much heavily on the end user, looking at another product that's really suitable for them, it's probably going to be very beautiful and very value rich, but it might end up being too expensive for somebody to actually purchase. And last thing, we looked at prioritizing potentially for a developer experience. You're going to have a technically sound product. It's going to be easy to integrate and work with on the development side, but it just might not fit the market. You might fail to attract buyers, users might not be able to utilize it. And so ultimately, you may have a product that ends up not good for purpose.
Yes.
So we're going to talk through my own example and the hiccups that I had learning all the way in product. So as I mentioned earlier, I worked for a company called Dojo in the UK, here in the payment space. They focus really on small to medium enterprises, the core market being small to medium, and it's payments, so by card machines or online payment channels. And at my time at Dojo, I one day had a business development manager from the commercial team message me on Slack saying, really exciting opportunity to ask no questions, and his customer was completely the opposite end of the target market that we typically were going after at that time. And at this point as well, we were a few months post-launch of Dojo. So actually we were heavily focused on some critical initiatives that were going to serve our small to medium businesses. And whilst we had our eye on the enterprise customers, it was further down the line and not right now. So I joined the call anyway, to listen to the customer. I met with the IT project manager there. He was essentially the buyer for the business, the customer. And he listed out a whole list of requirements, a very long list that wasn't exhaustive or cohesive, and mostly conflicted with our roadmap. So there are key three things that I kind of learned along the way, or stumbled along learning along the way. The first one that I wanted to talk about was identifying your customers and their needs. So going back and forth with this IT project manager, we were talking about all their requirements, and I would be asking lots of questions, and it was a bit like Chinese whispers. It would be me to him, him to some stakeholder, some stakeholder back to him, and then back to me. And as you can imagine, a lot of context was lost in translation. So we get to a point that we're talking about the finance manager's needs, the reporting in the business, so understanding transactions and locations. And here I am thinking, happy days, we have this one solved, our product already looks after this, they can utilize it. We then sit down and discuss it further a few weeks later, and it turns out it's just not good for purpose. It's going to be unscalable for them. And this was quite a top priority at that point. So going back to the drawing board, I then sat down to really just identify each of those customer personas and get connected with them directly so that I could really dig into what were their needs, what pain points do they have, and how does our product meet them or not meet them today. So that was the first hiccup along the journey that wasted a bit of time. The next one was leveraging other people's expertise. So I don't know who else here is a product manager and has experienced the feeling that you have to have all the answers when you walk into a room. I probably felt like that and did at this point in time because I needed to know everything for this customer and build it in the product. And so when it came to the finance manager's reporting requirements, I, as I said before, worked in that, went deep diving with the customer to understand what their needs are. Then kept coming back to the drawing board how we could figure out a solution for this in our product. Ultimately, working with the engineering manager, I just couldn't prioritize this as a piece that we would actually want to build because as a customer, the data was showing me if we worked on this for this customer, we were going to lose out a lot on the other customers that were our core base at the time. And so with that in mind, somebody mentioned to me, why don't we talk to the treasury team? They already do a similar function internally. So then I went off, had a chat with the treasury team and the BI team, and before you know it, we actually ended up with a working solution that I didn't need to build anything for, using other tools and systems we had internally. So with this, the key learning that I had was actually to collaborate early and often with other people in your business with different expertise, because you can start to solve the problem in different ways. And in this case, the reporting, the finance manager, who needed the reporting and features, was happy enough with what we were able to do as a workaround solution. And so that meant they could then help influence the buyer to sign off on this as being solved for the moment, with the intention that we would work as a partnership in the future to figure out how we can solve this longer term in our product. So as I said, collaborating internally, that wouldn't have been possible without other people inside my team in the business, and also the commercial team at that point as well, helping to influence the buyer and get them to be happier with the solution and the situation we are in. And lastly, a very key one that goes back to the point at the beginning. Don't forget a customer persona. So one of the key problems that I stumbled upon was building something that wasn't quite right. And this was because there was a sense of pressure internally. It was a huge opportunity for both market presence and revenue. And as I said before, with a smaller base, every customer starts to count. And equally from the customer themselves, they're a business, they have their own timelines. They don't come around that often necessarily looking for your product. So when they're there, you really need to capitalize on that conversation. So with this pressure around timelines, both internally, externally, the customer basically communicated a very key critical requirement for them, which was on the card machine to be able to split bills. So with the time constraints and reprioritizing and shuffling things around in certain ways, I started working on this with the design manager in isolation and working with the buyer, the IT project manager, who was signing off this bill. We then got to the point that we were rolling out, we built it, we delivered it, we rolled it out to a couple of locations, and everyone was excited at this point with the momentum. We're moving towards a fully fledged contract with this customer. Unfortunately, though, as you can imagine, it wasn't quite fit for purpose. So when we rolled out those specific features, they weren't being utilized by the staff because the buyer was the one that was signing off on the flow with us, who was very far removed from the end user's experience on a daily basis. And actually, we ended up having a buyer happy to purchase, but an end user that wasn't going to use the product. So the key learning here was to remember back to those customer personas, make sure you're connecting directly, and don't worry that the loudest person in the room necessarily derail you from doing what you need to do as a product manager. So how do you manage multiple customer needs in a B2B product? There are a few key areas there that I talked about thinking around, and a few points that I would say just to bear in mind from the learnings that I've had in either music or your today. The first two, when you're thinking about how you win over this community of people that have very, very deep expectations and how you deliver sufficient value to them, really go back to mapping those key customer personas and having those across a number of different customers, because you'll start to see the trends and you'll start to know in depth what the different types of users you have, what their needs are, and how your product meets them today or will do in the future. And also work with your other teams internally, especially commercial and customer success. So identify who has this buying power and who helps to influence those decisions. And that will also help you tailor the conversations and the way that you're building your product towards those needs. When you're thinking about how you can balance your long-term strategic vision with the customer's short-term immediate needs, trying to get buy-in from the customer as soon as possible on what the critical needs are, prioritize them with them, and be able to set clear expectations as to how you could or could not deliver these in the future with your products and a partnership with that customer. You want to be able to showcase their needs and how it fits into your long-term vision as well, and this goes back to the point about balancing. You need to be able to balance what works for this customer or across a number of customers as well, and not be too nuanced with that specific customer. And as I talked about as well, try to collaborate with other people internally. So something that they do really well at Lean, where at the moment, they have a customer channel. And within that, people from different disciplines across the company are involved. You don't have to be actively working on anything, but you can post an update about something that's happening with that customer, some learnings or context. And it just helps to spread awareness and allow other people to provide critical or important information that can help you move forward faster on that, or in this case. And lastly, the very key one that I talked about, trying to avoid building for one customer persona. There may be certain times in B2B that you make an active decision to do that. But if that's not a decision that you're making, try to make sure that you're catching yourself before you end up building a product that is in fact market fit. So really keep referring back to those different customer personas, look at the needs, and make sure that you're building the right value for the right people. And thank you very much.